everyone, and welcome back to Feminism, Fascism, and the Future. In this episode of We Talk to Really Smart People, we talk with Maya Rupert. If you don't know her yet, you will soon. She's exactly the sort of clear-eyed, strategic, and committed political player we need right now. Maya's a lot of things, including someone who ran a presidential campaign, wrote a book called The Real Ones about racism and authenticity, and she's even made a podcast. But more importantly, she's insistent that we can and will create a better, more feminist future than the fascist present. So have a listen, buy her book, and get yourself registered to vote. It's not the only thing we need to do, but it is one of the things.
My name is Maya Rupert. I'm a political strategist. I'm an author of the recently released book, The Real Ones, How to Disrupt the Hidden Ways Racism Makes Us Less Authentic. I have worked on campaigns at pretty much every level imaginable. I was Julian Castro's campaign manager in 2020. I was a senior advisor for Elizabeth Warren. When Castro withdrew, I moved over to the Warren team. In 2021, I managed Maya Wiley's New York City mayoral race. Just recently, I was his chief strategist for Charles Booker, who just won the Senate primary in Kentucky and is now running in the general for that seat. So I've gotten a chance to work with those candidates, but also advise many, many more. And yeah, I'm deeply invested in the future of this country, the Democratic Party, and how we can build power on behalf of regular people.
I love that. And before we move to fully political questions, I wonder if you could tell us about your book, The Real Ones, what it's about and why people should read it. And listeners, we will have a link on our website.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. Yeah. So The Real Ones, this book really came to me after working with candidates and realizing over and over again that we have this concept of authenticity that we talk about constantly and we treat as an absolute essential thing, but it has largely remained undefined. And because it's undefined, there's a lot of space for a lot of bias to sneak in. So basically what I wanted to talk about was what authenticity really is, and that basically argue the way it's popularly understood, it doesn't really exist. And the tough thing about that is when something is that important, but it's also very difficult to say exactly what we're talking about, it just becomes really easy to use it to reinforce our own existing ideas about things. So in politics, we talk about political authenticity, but then the ways that people get read as authentic or inauthentic a lot of times have a lot to do with identity and power and race and bias. It happens in pop culture as well. We say we want authentic stories, but very often what we want are familiar stories. And when there are fewer options, when you're talking about communities of color, when you're talking about really people with any kind of marginalized identity, you have a much smaller window where you're going to be able to be considered authentic. So what the book is really about is deconstructing this idea and trying to come up with a framework to talk about authenticity and realness that's accessible to more of us and allows us to actually see like the full range of what can be real to people.
That's great. Everybody should read it. And I think it is really interesting who gets marked as inauthentic, and what that does have to do with race and gender and sexuality, maybe.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a very complicated question and one that winds up, I think, whenever I talk to people with various marginalized identities and I bring this up, people immediately respond with, yes, I noticed that. Or, so many times, because what we ask people to do when we talk about authenticity is think about who you are without worrying about who people expect you to be. Well, if you grew up with some kind of difference where you had to be very conscious of a dominant gaze, maybe you were hiding a sexual orientation, or maybe you had something about you that made other people, there were stereotypes associated with it and you needed to try to break away from them. The way you developed your sense of self was in part a function of how everyone was going to see you and who you needed to be. So the very question of who am I isn't an uncomplicated question for a lot of us. And it's one that involves other people's expectations. So if you say, all right, we'll strip away all of that and then find out who you are, and that's your authentic self. I feel like, well, you're asking to strip away parts of me that are actually me. So it really does become a much more complicated question, and we treat it like it's a lot more straightforward. And that's what I want us to shift. I want us to just understand that people come to that question with so much more baggage than sometimes we give it credit for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, double consciousness, triple consciousness,
Yes,
quadruple consciousness, depending on who we are in the world.
absolutely.
And then let's punish those who aren't um, authentic subjects, as it were.
Right, right. And we hold them up to scrutiny and we say, that's the reason I don't want to vote for her. She just doesn't seem as authentic. The reason I don't like this show, it doesn't seem like it's telling an authentic story. And then, you know, we don't elect people, or shows get canceled, or more limited stories get told. And then we look around and it seems like, well, but these are all objective measures, but they're not. The bias is baked into the thing we're asking. So, yes, everyone's told to be authentic, but the way we read, you know, a white male candidate that we're used to seeing as a presidential candidate in so many different forms gets read as authentic more quickly than a Black woman who needs to fit within a very specific box, or we're going to immediately think she's inauthentic. So technically, everyone's getting asked the same question, but we're not getting held to the same metric.
Exactly. Can you tell us also, you have a podcast, right? I listened to one of them called When We
Yes,
Win. Is that what it's called?
when
When We Win?
yes, when we win, it was a limited series podcast where I got a chance to talk to women of color who ran for office and challenge some sort of conventional narratives around how you run for office and win, and won. And so I wanted to talk about, I think sometimes we tell everybody that there's one pathway, that everyone kind of needs to do the same set of things. But when the system isn't set up for you, very often the one path is also not set up for you. So I really wanted to showcase some of the stories of people who were challenging some of the conventional wisdom, who were saying, I can run with a slate of people. Everyone doesn't need to be a competitor. I can actually see this, we can come from a place of abundance, or, if I'm not being read the right way by the gatekeepers, I'm going to ignore the gatekeepers and go straight to the voters. People who challenge some things that we say, well, if you want to run, you have to get these endorsements. You have to sign up for these things. And they recognize, well, that's not ever going to read me the way I want to be read. So I'm going to go to a different place to do it. Because I think that's the future of politics. I think more and more, a lot of the gatekeeping that has said, this is the way you get elected, this is the way you do things, those things are holding less and less power because people are challenging, well, do I have to do it that way? And so I think the more we see people running in a way that feels more natural for them, running in ways that actually can metabolize what they're trying to do, we're going to see more pathways into power.
Oh, I hope that's true. I hope that's true.
I think it's true. I think we're seeing a lot of it. I think Zohran Mamdani is such a good example of this. I think because it's so funny because so many people are like, oh, I want to do what Zohran did and go viral and do this and do that. And I'm like, remember, Zohan Mamdani did that because he wasn't getting taken seriously by like cable news. He wasn't getting asked for the interviews because people basically said he doesn't have a shot. So he went to his audience in a way that feels natural to him. I would not encourage every single candidate to do what Zoran did as far as tactic, but as far as outlook, as far as saying, where are my people? How are they going to hear me? Let me do that and then force the establishment to pay attention is a lot of times the way it's going to happen, because people are running in different ways, and the mechanisms that we have, traditional media, a lot of this, we're reaching the end of its ability to do what current leaders needed to do.
This is exactly why I wanted to talk to you, Maya. I've been reading your stuff, I've been watching your appearances online, and it just seems to me you still have a political imagination. And I think a lot of us, and I include myself in this, have lost ours. Like, what do we do? How do we win? But also, what will we do when we win? Um,
Yeah.
and what does this world look like that we're fighting for? And I wonder if you can tell us what's going on in your much more imaginative head than mine.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I definitely feel like I have a political imagination and it's expanding right now. And I feel like we are in a moment where it's very easy to see why people feel so discouraged and so beaten down. But the weird thing about moments like this is that they also are expansive. We have to let them be expansive, but they can be. Because when the things that I just counted on being true aren't true anymore, then that means the things that I don't want to be true don't have to be true anymore either. If we can take any good thing from this moment, if we are watching, which I believe, the end of American democracy, I genuinely think that what we're talking about is having to restore it, not rebuild it. I think that we just lost the Voting Rights Act, something that I thought was, I don't care what your politics are, nobody is going to sign off on. We're gonna gut the Voting Rights Act. There's really nothing left of it at this point. We lost Roe versus Wade. We are getting attacked by an illegitimate Supreme Court every day that has very clearly proven that it is partisan politics. It is not the law that is guiding them. That is terrifying and it's hard and that's real. And I will never try to sort of hope core people out of their righteous anger and indignation and genuine fear. But that also means that if those things aren't set in stone, then nothing is. So do I have to think about, well, how do we fix these rulings from the Supreme Court? Sure, but I can also say, let's unpack the court. They cheated to get us here. Let's fix it. We don't have to nibble around the edges. If we have lost the pillars of our legal system, then let's rework it in a way that doesn't just get us back to a status quo. Let's actually imagine what we would want. If they're terrorizing people on our streets, we don't need to fix ICE. We can get rid of ICE. ICE didn't exist before. It doesn't have to, right? So there's this moment where you feel almost like there's like a defiance. Like if everything is this fragile, then we can knock it down and build something bigger too. And that and I don't want that to happen at the expense of people's daily safety. I think it can, but I think it can happen through a democratic process. I think we can fundamentally reorient our politics. Like that's what we're seeing. This moment where people are talking about like, wait, it doesn't just have to be true that some of us can't afford our lives. Like they just sold us on the idea that, well, yeah, someone has, that's capitalism. Like people are looking around and saying, well, okay, wait, is it possible for me not to go broke if I get sick? Well, then let's think about that. When everything gets thrown open like that, we get to imagine something new. So that's what I'm trying to do is like the bully kicks the sandcastle down. It's horrifying and it's mean and it's mean spirited and it's cruel. But now we get to build something else. And what does that get to look like? That's what I want our project to be right now.
I love this. And it's so important, I think, for me to hear, for a lot of our listeners to hear, because as you know, there are a lot of people, some of whom I love dearly, who are progressives, who want the world you want, who want the world I want, who want something way more just than the status quo and definitely better than what we have now. But they're making the argument that electoral politics are a dead end, right? That we have to expend our political energy elsewhere, maybe in our neighborhood planning committees, maybe in our activism, but that, electoral politics are dead, the system is ridiculous, and we shouldn't pay attention even to the upcoming midterms. And I'm wondering how you feel about that argument and what you would say to people who are thinking that.
I guess the first thing I would say is I understand why they think that. I understand the frustration of feeling like, when things are this big, it's like go vote, and then we're kind of like, to what end? What's going to happen if we all turn out and vote? What do we get? I get it, but what I would say is this: one, genuinely, right now, making sure that there is a legislative check on Donald Trump is incredibly important. If you are horrified right now, we need to make sure that there is a mechanism to shut him down for 2 years, and that path is in sight. Democrats can take the House and Democrats can take the Senate. And I get it that you might not always feel like the Democratic Party does enough. So what difference does it make? It is true that like you can feel two of these things at once, that there is so much more that could be being done, and that the difference between a party that is going to fully enable Donald Trump and a party that is going to stand in opposition are qualitatively and fundamentally different futures, and they impact people who cannot afford to have us feel this kind of demoralized. The difference between what will be our future with people who are going to stand in the way and people who will be beholden to us saying, stand up, fight back against him, versus the people who will not take our phone calls. That difference in future matters immensely to people who are vulnerable and who need our help right now. So that I get it. I get the frustration. There are days I share the frustration, but I cannot cotton to there's sort of no difference between those two futures. We know better than that. But more than immediate term, I think what we have to remember is the result. Where we are right now is the result of several years of feeling like there's sort of there's not enough that can be done at the voting level, right? We every time we lose something that can't be gotten back. I feel like we have moved, even the concept of our center, our political center, has moved so much to the right. We have a lot of work to do of clawing things back. And because some things on our system take a while, it matters how we vote right now, because if in 5 years our politics shifts again the way that we've seen it happen over the last 5 years, we need to the groundwork now so that the future, you know, person we're trying to elect, we could, try to elect a president that absolutely shares your values, and they're going to be locked in by a Supreme Court or by a federal judiciary or by laws that get passed now because we weren't preparing for that. So that's the thing. We've got to think about it in the short run, but we've also got to be playing the long game. And the long game means we've got to be getting people that are closer to our values in office right now. And right now, more than ever, we are seeing voters asking for leaders that are actually proposing real solutions that are bold, that move things forward, and they're winning. So now more than ever is a chance to, if you have felt like there's not a point, look around. People are electing to local leadership, to legislatures, people like to executive positions, people that are really devoted to a new way of politics. So now more than ever, voting matters.
I was going to ask you, what can we say to our friends and colleagues who think this way, but I think you've said it. I always say if voting didn't matter, they wouldn't be taking away people's right to vote.
Exactly. If it were that, yes, they would just say like, okay, fine, do whatever you're gonna do, and we're gonna get the real work done over here. They actually like it is an incredibly important thing. And gosh, I wish there were a way that we could better restore people's feeling of identity in being a voter.
Yeah, yeah. Um, it is definitely frustrating to see this narrative gain hold, even as we have more and more leaders who are taking us to a place that is more like the place that we want to be, right?
Right. And look, voting, you can't stop at voting. That is definitely true. I do think that sometimes we do this like, show up, vote, and then it's like everybody sort of retreats. Your political action, that has to be one of the things in the toolbox. But once you vote, yes, hold people accountable. Like accountability is a love language. Push the people that you just voted for and put there to stand by their values and do what you put them there to do. Remind people that when things are hard, take the people you didn't vote for, who you don't think are where they need to be, and convince them. Like, that is the job. I feel like that's the job of it's activism, right? Like, sometimes I feel like we get too stuck on this idea that's like, I want you to have, I want you to share my position, and I want you to have always shared my position. I'm comfortable electing people, smart people who disagree with me, who are going to hear from smart people who disagree with them and have a different idea. Like, this is all a process. So once the people are in office, that's just step one. We've got to keep pushing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We got to keep pushing. It doesn't end with voting, but you got to vote.
You've got to vote.
You got to vote. I'm wondering, and this is a curveball question because I didn't have it in the questions I sent to you, but what's next for you? What are you going to do next? Are you going to go into politics?
I don't know. I think that, 2028 is coming up fast. And I want, I want to see incredible people running. We are going to have a moment that I think can be defining for the Democratic Party. What is power going to look like? And can we harness it on behalf of people? And to me, that means we need strong progressives running. We need that primary to feel like one of ideas, one of new and big ideas. And I think we can shift what is sort of normal for the party. So I would love to see some incredible people throwing their hat in the ring. And if they would have me, I would definitely work for a campaign again. Um, but I also could see, I think there are a lot of ways that I feel like I can help. What I want to do is help shape a conversation. And if that's through a campaign, that could be great. If it's through writing, speaking, doing other things, I think there are a lot of ways to be involved. But I definitely feel like 2028 is going to be consequential for how Democrats get elected, I think, for a very long time. And I think we should all be thinking about how we want to show up.
What's giving you hope right now? What's keeping you going?
I mean, again, I will say, I think the primaries have been really exciting. I have loved seeing um, so many. Look, I'm a progressive, right? I love to see progressives. I love to see democratic socialists talking openly about values and getting elected. But I will broaden that because I think that this can be an exciting moment, even if you don't necessarily say those are my politics. What I think is really cool is that people are voting on ideas. I think that people are saying, I want somebody who is talking about improving my life, like qualitatively, next month. And that to me says we have a moment with voters where what people want to hear is like, all right, what are you going to do to help me and my family? And when that's the animating question for our leaders, we win. Working people win. Regular people win. And if that's what we go into this moment with, it's a much more it's a unifying framework because affordability is something that touches on all of us and all of us together, right? I think that we can think of this in terms of like a unifying coming together moment rather than the divisiveness that we see that tells us that some communities rights and justice comes at the expense of other people's rights and justice, that we don't have to be divided that way, that we can all rise together. I think that's a really motivating thing to have come out of one of the more divisive and white identitarian leaders we've had in recent history.
Well, especially because he seems incapable of discussing affordability. So So
Yeah,
come on over, white working class. We're here.
come on over. Try, please. I would love to hear him right now in a rally go and talk to the people that he convinced to vote for him because he cares about working people. I would love to hear him try to sell not signing the bipartisan housing bill that would have given real relief to people and families all across this country because he didn't get his weird voting bill voted on. It's such a clear indicator that the coalition he put together is not one that can sustain because he does not care about the people he was pretending to care about. And if Democrats can be again the party of working people in a real way, in a not rhetoric, but here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're talking about doing. We are going to focus on you as the center of our politics. I think we see the future of the Democratic Party being shaped by this.
What haven't I asked you that I should have asked you that you want to tell our listeners about?
I feel like we are standing at the sort of precipice of like we're standing at the front of our sort of next big revolution, right? When we think about the role that generative AI is going to play on the future of work and the way we interact together and with each other. And it is an issue that it's not a, it's not a tech issue. It's a tech issue and a privacy issue and a work issue and it's a women's issue because the fastest growing industries are industries where women are disproportionately working, and we have got to think about the impact that it's going to have on women in particular. It's an affordability issue. It's an everything issue, right? And I think that one of the questions I feel like we should be asking ourselves right now, all of us, is like when the car was being developed, when in the last big moments, what do we wish people had been thinking about so we could go into that revolution from a place of power for working people, for communities that are going to be left out if we aren't very intentional about bringing them in? What are the things we wish we had known? What if labor had started the conversation with a 5-day work week? Where would we be, right? So it's like, I want to be thinking about what are the set of things we wish somebody had said at the beginning of the last one so we can say here, hey, like we're coming into this discussion with this as our baseline. We're going to protect human labor. We're not letting entry-level jobs just disappear. We're not giving up a generation of young working people. We're not going to do it. This is what has to happen. Nothing is inevitable about any of this except for us. What do we want that set of questions to be? Because whatever that is, make that your litmus test for 2028. Make that who you're voting for for city council to president. What are the baselines we should all be treating this moment in human history with? And let's force a level of debate that is worthy of us in this incredibly consequential moment that we are living in.
Yeah, I like the idea of comparing it to cars, right? Because what did they do? They tore down black neighborhoods, they built highways through them. Where are they putting the data centers and some of the more
Yes.
marginalized, right? And
Yes.
I mean, we seem to have learned nothing, to be clear. And then there's the environmental cost of cars, which we're all living with in our summer. And there's the environmental cost of AI, which isn't being
Right.
very well discussed.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And what would it mean to not repeat the exact same mistakes all over again?
Right. Right. And just to think about it from that place of abundance, because we've been here before, so we can avoid some of the same mistakes.
Yes, we can, and it's not
We can.
inevitable. And I think that's
Exactly.
a good thing to end on. Thank you so much for talking with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the community that you built, and thank you for letting me come be a part of it.
Yay. Hope you have a good day.
Same to you. Appreciate you.
Thanks to everyone who made this podcast happen. Maya for taking the time to speak with us, Julian Seeger Reed for some serious instruction in sound engineering, and Harper and Allison for all the things. If you like this episode, please share with friends and enemies alike. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok. Write a nice review on your favorite podcast platform. And look for some great new episodes of Feminism, Fascism, and the Future that will come out soon.